Okay, let's get started with this week's lecture. I know that you've employed time management skills in the past, either at jobs or at school or just in your personal life. It's really no different for law school, but the kinds of things you have to account for and the things to include can be a little different and a little more challenging. So today, we've gone through the first two items already, and now we're on to the third, discussing time management and to begin creating a schedule. Like many things you do in law school, the first step is to check the syllabus. This will be just as important when we talk about outlining later in the semester, but it's also important for scheduling because it contains that important information of when things are due. Briefly, though, a syllabus sets the tone of the class. It explains the grading structure. Learning objectives will be clearly articulated. And so all of that gives you a sense of what you'll be doing in the class as a general point. The last point is really what I want to focus on today, and that's to identify when projects are due to plan your workload for the semester. So, time management is an extremely important skill to develop. Students who manage their time well are more likely to meet their academic and personal goals, and successful students take responsibility for developing and adhering to a realistic schedule to accomplish required tasks. And really, the key word in that bullet is realistic. You could put on your schedule to study from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. every Saturday, but I think realistically you aren't going to do that. And really, you shouldn't. You will not, after the first several hours, be able to incorporate more information very effectively. So really maintaining and establishing a realistic schedule is the way to go. And students who manage their time well are likely to avoid the dangers of procrastination. And generally, the strategy employed by those people who avoid procrastination, unlike your dear professor, mind you, take on the most important tasks first and then complete the less important tasks later in any particular study session. So the first thing to recognize in establishing a schedule for law school is how much time you actually have to manage. So it's a little bit different than undergrad, where you could coast for weeks perhaps and then get back to it and jump right back in the boat. Here in law school, you really have to stay up with things, and generally the ABA recommends 2 hours for every hour spent in class. So for full-time students, you have 15 class hours or 15 credits this semester, so you have 30 hours outside of class in a general sense, which would lead to 45 hours. For evening and part-time day students, this part looks easier. It's really not, because they have 2 additional categories, as we'll see. So for full-time students, hours per week, like we just established, you have 45 hours to attend class and study if your studying adheres to the 2 hours per credit, or 2 hours per hour spent in class. Sleep is 56%. You will hear this consistently. Sleep is so important. Do not, if you can at all help it, sacrifice sleep for studying or performance, because performance erodes with lack of sleep. I have a friend up in the biology department who actually studied sleep patterns among her students and saw that sleep hygiene, if you will, consistent and Sleep of a particular length was key for her students in succeeding. The grades tracked that very well. Sleep is so important, really. From a neuroscientific perspective, psychological perspective, it's really something you have to protect. That leaves you with 67 hours for other stuff. That sounds like a lot of time, and that's great. However, you should recognize that there are a lot of things to do in law school. There are different kinds of organizations you can join, different, not so much first year, but as was discussed at orientation, there are clinics, there are all these different kinds of things you can do. You'll find quickly that 67 hours starts to erode with school activities. Additionally, you have other activities in your daily life that you use that time for. And let's just talk about that briefly. So, some preliminary considerations before we get into that other time segment section. Everybody's schedule won't look the same. Each of us is different, and each of us should employ a study strategy that works best for ourselves. They all share some things in common, realistic schedules, etc. But it can vary in particulars pretty dramatically. I'm a night owl. I prefer to work from 9 to 1 than I would between 6 and 10 in the morning. Oh, even saying that makes my hands sweat. I really am a night owl. And if you are too, then recognize that and maybe don't stay up till 1 or whatever. You may have the stamina to do so. I don't anymore, honestly. But recognize when you study best and go with that. Where do you study best? When I was in law school, it was very important for me to go to the library. First year, I tried going to a coffee shop, and there was too much distracting me there. For me, the library was the place to go. I knew when I was in there, I was studying, and that was what I was going to do there. I wasn't going to mess around. I was there to get my work done and be done with that work. So, again, when you're in a remote setting, if you have any of your classes remote, and you will have contracts remote, set up a place at home where you can study and make that your study spot. Don't go there unless you're studying, and if you're studying, go there. It really will make your life better to be able to have that spot where you can lock in. That's the kind of thing which will really make a big difference as you go through the semester. If you have family, communicate that to them as well. Hey, I'm going to study here. I really need to focus my time. So if you see me with headphones on and sitting at that end of the kitchen table, that's my study end. If you could, just please leave me alone, and I could spend more time with you later if I efficiently get my work done now. And what circumstances help you concentrate? I prefer silence. I'm a musician. I play guitar and mandolin, bass guitar, other instruments, things with strings typically. So if I'm listening to music, it's like someone's talking to me. I just can't listen to it because my brain processes it differently. My wife, however, has podcasts on all day and writes briefs. I have no idea how she does it. But recognize that all works for you and can work for you. So we break down the scheduling process into 3 parts. First is the semester schedule, sort of people refer to it as a 10,000-foot view. So you are going to have high workload periods. And typically they'll come before deadlines, of course. You'll have a series of deadlines starting early in the semester for legal research and writing, LRW. And additionally, you'll have deadlines throughout the semester for LRW. One of the things you can glean from your syllabus is exactly that kind of information. identifying the high workload periods before the deadlines. Another period will be before your final memo is due in LRW, before midterms. You're going to want to spend more time studying. So remember that you have to accommodate those things within your schedule in a monthly sense, right? Additionally, I recommend that you reverse plan for project completion. And by that I mean, if you're, I'm just going to pick a date here, this isn't actually accurate. But if your memo is due November 1st, let's say December 1st, count backwards from that day and say, okay, I want to have my final memo completed before 2 weeks from that time. So November 16th or whatever it is, you set that as the date on your schedule to have the final draft ready for revision. And maybe you have sections of the memo, the facts, the argument for issue 1, argument for issue 2, that you can also build back into your schedule. And I want to finish those maybe 3 weeks before I finish my rough draft so that I have time to integrate them all into a whole. But the key here is to be realistic about the time required to complete the tasks. LRW first off, let me say LRW is an incredibly valuable class. It teaches you how to write like a lawyer, and part of that is thinking like a lawyer that instantiates on the page. It can be very difficult and time-consuming as well, but the value you get out of it is consistently appreciated by graduates and students in their upper years. So when you look at the due dates for LRW, recognize that these aren't things you're going to cram. Oh, I'm going to write the memo in 48 hours because I always write papers like that. Try not to do that. That's going to be a bad strategy in law school. You'll end up really disliking your future self or your past self once you see what fruit that bears. So be realistic about the time to complete the tasks. Then you can think of it as zooming in to a weekly schedule, and I like to think of that as the time budget allocation. It's very similar to it relates to the pie chart that I put up earlier. That shows the amount of time you have in any given week, and you have to budget that. There's an allocation there of time between studying, working out, and things we'll talk about in a moment. But the key is to try and remember everything that you will do on a weekly basis to include in your weekly schedule. And of course, you have daily to-do lists. I'm not really going to talk about that. You know how to break down work. You know how to divide those individual tasks, reading, updating outline, whatever it might be on any given day. That's something you're able to do. And I guess I will say a little more. I forgot about this bullet, honestly. But the daily to-do list is just that. It's a task-oriented schedule rather than a sort of time management schedule. Just do the tasks that are in front of you. And again, I recommend doing the hard tasks first. Your brain is fresher at that point and you'll be more efficient in getting that work done. Let's talk a little bit more about the semester schedule. What do you need to accomplish this semester? Well, you want to survive, obviously, and that can be a challenge at times. But the other things will be you think about what you have to do this semester. You'll have midterms. You'll have all the assignment dates for LRW. Those are good examples. And finals, of course. So finals this semester will be between December 2nd and December 19th. That is a little earlier than years past, but it really allows you to get ready, allows you some time to get ready for Christmas in those 9 or 10 days afterwards. Midterms, I recommend that you check your doctrinal syllabi for that information. I think it's going to be week 8, from all I've heard from the doctrinal professors. So definitely include those on your semester schedule. I would, again, look at LRW assignments and be aware that the breaks are in there for you to take advantage of. My first year, Thanksgiving was a very busy time for me for law school. I was working full time, like I said previously, and when uh, Thanksgiving came around, I was like, wow, I actually have 5 free evenings in a row. I'm going to get some serious work done, um, and I did. That being said, I would have been a lot better off had I been keeping up with things the whole semester and just putting the icing on the cake come Thanksgiving time. But recognize those breaks are in there for you to take advantage of. Okay, let's get into the weekly schedule. And this is where you have to be particularly honest with yourself and thorough in categorizing what you need to, capturing really everything you need to do. So, of course, you're going to want to read and brief cases. That will take a lot of time at the beginning of the semester, but as the semester progresses, you'll recognize how much better you're getting at that task. And you'll recognize the skills you're acquiring, actually. But like was said in orientation, don't skimp on reading and briefing cases first and second semesters. That's how you understand the law better, and that's how you actually will understand legal reasoning, by seeing it in action in a court's opinion. Okay. Additional academic things that you need to accomplish every week include reviewing and clarifying your class notes. And this was brought up during orientation, and I want to amplify it a little bit now. For me, let me tell you how I used class notes first, and then I'll describe some other ways. For my classes, I had all my cases briefed electronically, and I would have those open. Again, I view a brief as not only allowing you to distill the content of a legal opinion, but also as a note card if you're called on to discuss that case. Boom, you have the information here. You can read it, or you don't have to, and you can refer to it when you need details that you don't recall. I actually had a classmate who prided himself on never looking at his notes. It was almost creepy how he stared at the professor when he briefed a case. But he never lost eye contact because he wanted to show how well he knew his stuff. I didn't understand that now, still don't, so I really wouldn't recommend that. But in class, what I would do is revise my notes based on what my understanding was versus what the professor was explaining. If there was a discrepancy, I immediately cleared out the portion of my notes or my notes or brief that were wrong, and replaced them with that appropriate understanding. I would also take quick notes just on certain legal principles, perhaps that I didn't capture in the reading, or other points that were raised in class that I wanted to revisit. Then, when it came time to review my notes and actually make them coherent, I went back, and if I wanted to explore a particular hypothetical in more detail, I did so. That's what I used the time for review and clarification of class notes. Your class notes aren't going to be in your outline per se, not word for word, but they will reflect the portions of the class that you feel are most important, and the portions, even more importantly, of the class that the professor thinks are important. That's something which you should pay close attention to. Your professor is teaching you the law they want you to know in the way they want you to know it. So keep your antenna up for any of those times that your professor says, this is an important concept, or this is something I want to really make sure that you understand. Make sure you understand it. After a couple of weeks, this isn't early on necessarily, like I said in orientation, but after a couple of weeks, you should start work on Sorry, I got an email. Start work on creating or updating your outline with new material. So after about week 3, when we will go over outlining, you can start to pull together your outline, which again is, as Professor Kaufman explained, the body of law that your professor wants you to know. And when you pull that together in about week 3, the best thing to do is to each week incorporate the new material into the outline. Don't wait till the end of the semester. If at all, no, I'm just going to say, not if at all possible, just don't. Don't wait till the end of the semester. It's important to keep up on this because of how your brain learns, which is what we'll be talking about next week, the metacognitive aspects of the legal educational experience and how you can take advantage of some inherent properties of your brain to improve your performance. In order to do that, you need to have the work spread out, not crammed together. So that's why really you should be updating your outline with new material from week 3 on. You should also include time to review, complete practice questions, perhaps a study group, maybe do flashcards. And we'll talk more about flashcards next week, but they're a very valuable tool in the legal educational experience, frankly. But, those complete practice questions and review times probably will grow longer as the semester grows longer. But you should count on putting in 4 to 6 hours per class to do so. You recognize this kind of exceeds the ABA's 2 hours per credit, but that's the nature of the game. You have to put in the time and effort in order to engage the material, learn it, and be able to perform and recite analysis. So that was a fairly long-winded explanation of the things that you have to, academic issues and things that you have to include in your schedule. And my transitions are always questionable. You'll see this about me throughout the semester. My transitions, I did it wrong at one point, and now I just like to surprise myself by leaving them in from year to year and just see what happens. And it's always... Now, daily to-do list. It contains specifics, of course, based on your weekly schedule. You create it at the end of the day for the following day. Cross off tasks as incomplete as you complete them. But also, you probably already do this, but carry over uncompleted tasks to the next day. If Tuesday night you had scheduled to read for contracts, for example, and you just don't get to it because you spent too much time on LRW, for example, then move that contract reading to the next day. Don't say, oh, I'll do it double next week. Fairly easy concept, but it's one that you should keep in mind. All right, just a couple words about basic study strategies that are generally found to be useful in law school. You certainly know this, but you want to work on the most challenging work when you're freshest. For you, that may be writing. So you want to do all the writing in the first hour or 2 of your study session, and then leave it and go on to your next topic. But whatever is most difficult for you, if you just don't get torts, start on that first. It'll be better and more productive time spent. Just restating what I said, your first hour of studying is the most effective. It's been shown through cognitive psych studies. And the ability to retain material drops off after that first hour. It doesn't go away, but really the biggest challenges should be addressed in that first hour. So consider learning new material in the first hour and reviewing old material after that. That's really an effective way to properly take. So, like I was just saying, it's time to stop procrastination. If you're a procrastinator like me, then now is probably a pretty good time to shake that habit. Or sometime soon. I will always accommodate procrastination because I have a great deal of sympathy for the process. So here's a nice flow chart about procrastination. Sort of straightforward, but yep, that's what we do. Avoid it. Like I said, now's the time to sort of see if you can control that bad habit. Because the issues with procrastination are manifold. And the thing that you need to keep in mind is that no matter how intelligent, talented you are, if you don't put in the work and wait till the last minute, the results will be disappointing to you. You have to give yourself enough time to allow your abilities to express themselves. And particularly, those who've come from the humanities will recognize that that kind of synthesis and consolidation of material into a more mature, developed thought or work product, be it a memo or an answer, is best achieved not by rushing at the last minute, but rather by working on things progressively as your time is set up to allow. When you procrastinate, you rob yourself of that opportunity because you don't give yourself the chance to allow things to simmer and come back together in your brain. You take them apart, put them together, and see how you really think about it. You need to give yourself that opportunity, otherwise it will be a very stressful schedule for you and semester for you. Because of the higher stress, of course, you have all the stresses of silent killer stuff, right? You'll have exhaustion, more inclinations towards stress, which leads, in many instances, can lead at least, to substance abuse. Stress impacts the immune system. Indeed, it does, and that will impact illness during the semester. And look, nobody wants to get sick. It stinks being sick. So if you don't procrastinate, you won't get sick or something like that. Whatever, you know what I'm saying. It'll be better for you if you don't procrastinate. First step, as in changing any bad behavior, I think, is recognizing that you're procrastinating. Be honest with yourself. Just say, nope, I'm doing that and I need to stop. And so how do you do that? It's easy. Just do the thing that you need to do. Get her done. So you put things on your to-do list, and if they are sliding more than a couple days, tag them as something that needs immediate attention. Because you can't let things start to slide. Things come too quickly at you first year for you to let things slide and develop a huge to-do pile. If it happens, you can work through it, but don't put yourself in that situation if you don't have to. So taking advantage of open time is really an important skill to develop. More important for evening students because of the additional constraints and part-time day, because of the additional constraints on their schedule, be it family, work, whatever else it might be. But that open time you have is something you can take advantage of. When I was in school, I tried very hard to turn idle time into productive time. So, for an example, when I was living in the South Hills of Pittsburgh during my second and third year, I rode the T, the local trolley, in from the South Hills to the city. I was working in downtown and was going to school at night, so I had a good bit of time commuting. What I did was I had lectures. The ones I used were Sum and Substance. They're on every topic, and they go over things from a high level. It wasn't so much that I was using that as my study material, but it kept my head in the game. And some of those concepts that were maybe a bit more difficult for me to parse were addressed in the tapes, and I was able to take advantage of that time. It was a really effective thing for me to do. Similarly, if you're commuting, you could do the same thing. Some people prefer that time to, breathe, listen to the radio, listen to a sporting event. Baseball is, as of today, still being played, so you can listen to a game, whatever it might be. Recognize, again, this is something where your personal preferences can really make a difference into how you choose the path forward. For me, this was a great time to learn some things along the way. The additional option you have, given many courses are going, I think all courses are going to be recorded, is that you, if you can, and I'm pretty sure you can, I haven't tried, so I don't want to say with full confidence, but I think you're able to download your lectures from the actual course. And if you can do that and have them play on your radio or phone while you're commuting or while you're at the gym or whatever, that could be something that works quite well for you. Something to keep in mind. Like I said, we'll talk about flashcards next week, but really, it's fun to make your own flashcards. It's kind of crafty if you're a crafty person. I'm not, so I use electronic ones, but it also it helps if you make them yourself. We'll talk about that next week, but flashcards are a great way of making sure you have appropriately memorized rules, or you remember the principles that underlie, say, damages and contracts, or whatever it might be. It's a good way of assessing your understanding at any point in time, and they're easy to carry around and use when you're sitting somewhere between classes, whatever it might be. Speaking of the time between classes, when your notes are still fresh, it's a pretty good time to review those notes. You can throw some things in your outline or clarify things that you wrote. You can proof another mail. Sorry about that. Next time I'll stop my email program before starting the lecture. But you can add information to your outline, proofread your memo for LRW. There's lots of things you can be doing, or you could relax. I mean, look, this is not necessarily for everybody. I was someone who really tried to use all of their time very efficiently. I was in that position where I had to, being an evening student. So these approaches were very effective for me. If you have a little more time and some flexibility on stuff, and when you design your weekly schedule, there are blocks of time where you, during your idle time, are truly idle. Stick to that too. The trick is not overdoing it in one way or the other. So this is a difficult concept to approach because, like we talked about in orientation, law school is something you do. It's not who you are. So, you want to make sure you leave time to be yourself. You want to make sure you leave time in your schedule to pursue the things that still give you joy. I had a friend in the evening program when I was in school who every week watched the Steelers. Come hell or high water, no matter what was due, he watched the Steelers. I wouldn't have done that. There would have been weeks I would have taken off, but nope. He was hardcore, and that's what he did, and that was his time. He was working most of the rest of the time, but that's what he did. I guess I'm very popular today. But what you need to worry about is recognizing that you only have a certain amount of time to get everything done. And I am certain, want to succeed and excel in law school. So to do that, you need to put the time in. To put the time in, you have to have the time. So for that reason, you have to safeguard your time. Beware of wasting time on email or social media while you're studying. When you're studying, study. When you're emailing, email. It is easy to get sucked into IG, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're on, TikTok. Love TikTok. But you could get locked into all those things very easily and lose hours. It's dangerous, and the way I went about combating that was to do power hours, not the drinking power hour, the study power hour. So the way that worked for me is that I would work for 50 minutes straight, uninterrupted. I'm reading my damn book now. Okay? And then at 50 minutes, I would set an alarm or timer, and I would stop doing the work unless it was somewhere where I really wanted to keep going, and then allow myself 10 minutes to dick around on the internet. Check scores, check the chaos that's happening in 2020. I recognized back in March, I was looking at Worldometers, all the websites with the metrics on them. I was checking number of infections for every state and country and thinking why, but whatever. The world, if it's a mess, is going to be a mess when you're done with your studying. So just leave it until you're done, until you have these spots. That power hour approach really worked well for me because it's something to look forward to. I could play a game, whatever, for 10 minutes to recharge. I found it a very successful approach for me, and you might too. Transition fun again. Isn't that fun? So anyway, the general principle here is to learn to protect your study time. That might be disappointing people from time to time. Let's say every Saturday afternoon you went golfing with some buds. Well, maybe you can't do that every week. Maybe you do it once a month. And that may disappoint your friends, but you have to learn to protect your study time. If you're efficient, it gives you another motivation for being efficient when you're studying and working on school issues. You want to make sure that you protect that study time. So here's some additional considerations. Like everything this semester, we have to be willing to adjust and adapt. That's true of your schedule as well. If, I'm not saying we are, but if we shift to an online entirely format, like some schools have, just saying it's out there as an option some schools have performed, so it's smart to think about it. We recognize that, well, maybe your commute time is gone, so you'll have a little more time, or you can now approach your studying differently because you don't have to be on the bluff at Duquesne at a particular time. These are things you have to accommodate along the way. And look, if you set a schedule early on, change things that aren't working. It may make all the sense in the world on paper, but if you encounter it in real life and it's just not working for you, change it. I can work with you, your mentors can work with you on trying to figure out where it's falling apart, what's not working quite well. You can get something that works better. Keep perspective. Like I said, you certainly are law students now, but you are not law school now. So keep perspective. Keep the important things in your life important. And make time to study because it is your chosen vocation now. And you should want to understand things deeply and perform well, but keep perspective. Don't lose yourself in the process. Okay, so the task for week 1 is simple. Create a study schedule. Now, I have loaded onto Blackboard, for your convenience, an Excel spreadsheet which has 4 tabs for the day section and 1 tab for the evening section. The day sections tabs are each of the schedules for sections 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. So you pick the section that's you, and you can start building around the weekly schedules that I've given you there. I've also included on Blackboard a monthly schedule for you to sort of sketch out your semester. That is more for your own use. You don't have to turn that in this week. What I'd like you to do this week is set that weekly schedule, sort of to see if you're able to accommodate all the things that you need to do and to lay it out so that you can achieve them realistically. Here are things that you should definitely include in your schedule. Now, this schedule should be a complete This schedule should be a complete capture of what you'll be doing on a weekly basis. And, like many things I'm going to talk about this semester, the first couple times you do this, you should be thorough as hell. You shouldn't leave anything out. It feels pedantic. It really does. But if you take the steps incrementally, you will understand the process better, so that when it comes time that you're time crunched and you need to do it more quickly, you'll understand the process and be able to implement it. And same with your schedule. Take it very seriously at this point. Include everything. Include that golf game. Include times for video games. video gaming rather, if that's your shtick. I beat Other Worlds this summer on PS4 because it was that kind of summer, right? And it's awesome. I probably wouldn't start it during the semester, but if you have a game you're already playing and want to do that, cool. Cool. But here's some things that you really have to include. Okay, of course, class. At least 2 hours study time for each hour in class. And that study time should include reading, briefing, reviewing, and outlining. Reviewing, you can start now. Outlining, like I said, just wait a little bit till you have the tools and components to create the outline. Recognize also that LRW may take more than 2 hours every given week. So that's somewhere where you'll have to update your schedule to more realistically capture what you should be doing for LRW. You'll be able to do that probably even after this first week. You have a better handle on what you'll need to be doing there to succeed. I also included long-term LRW work. That could be on the month-based schedule that I'll be posting. So, this is the part of the schedule that actually is harder than scheduling all the academic stuff. Because you have to think about things that you do and take up time for you each and every week. If you work, if you have an evening job or whatever it might be, you have to include that. You should include and identify commute time. Capture your meal times, grocery shopping, other errands, exercise. All of these things are really important, but exercise has been shown repeatedly in research to dramatically improve mood, mental acuity. It's really something that if you exercise, it permits you the time maybe to step away from school, get your head straight, come back to it with a new perspective. Even if it's just going for a walk every day, or if you prefer to go to the gym, if your gym's open, right? Or if you want to go on a bike ride, all these things are something you should schedule in so that you have an appreciation. You want to capture everything that you're doing on a weekly basis because realistically, this is the stuff you'll have to manage when you're going through the semester. So, being realistic about things, you really need to include time with your family and friends. Because, like I said, law school isn't what you are, it's what you're doing. And you can't forget those people who are important to you. So I would always schedule a fun activity a week. For me, it was one because I was an evening student and working at Reed Smith at the time as a patent agent, so it was a total, pardon my French, shit show. And so I took off every Friday night. It's what I did, spent time with my family on that day. Didn't even think about picking up a book. I reserved that for my fun time. Any standing appointments, if you see a therapist, if you see a personal trainer, all that kind of stuff, where you have or guitar lessons, whatever it might be, right? Where you have those standing appointments, make sure you include those in your